Before we dive into this, a quick heads up. This story explores themes that some might find unsettling, including psychological suspense and the darker side of community secrets. Listener discretion is advised. Oakhaven always felt like a picture postcard. Not just any postcard, but one of those perfectly curated, sun-drenched images of Americana, where every blade of grass was green, every smile was genuine, and the biggest concern was whether Mrs. Henderson's prize-winning petunias would bloom on time for the annual summer festival. And at the very heart of that idyllic tableau, shimmering like a sapphire jewel reflecting an endless blue sky, was the Oakhaven Community Pool. For years, my memories of it were pure nostalgia. The scent of chlorine and sunscreen, the echo of laughter, the blissful escape from summer's oppressive heat. It was the epitome of childhood summers, a crystal-clear haven where worries dissolved into chlorinated bliss. But then I moved back, and the postcard began to fray at the edges. The perfect smile started to feel a little too fixed, the laughter a little too forced, and the shimmering pool, once a symbol of joy, began to reveal a frightening truth. The Oakhaven Community Pool was deeper than it looked, in ways no one ever talked about, in ways that had nothing to do with water. My name is Sarah Miller, and I returned to Oakhaven after a decade away. Not chasing nostalgia, but a quiet restart. Life in the city had grown too loud, too fast, too impersonal. I'd inherited my grandmother's small cottage, a charming if slightly creaky place just a few blocks from the town square, nestled under a canopy of ancient oak trees. The promise of small-town simplicity, of community, was a siren song I couldn't resist. And initially, Oakhaven delivered. Neighbors waved from their porches, the local diner knew my order after just 2 visits, and the air itself seemed to hum with a gentle, reassuring rhythm. But there was another rhythm too, a subtle underlying pulse that always seemed to lead back to the pool. It was the first question everyone asked without fail after "Welcome back, Sarah. And how was the city? Have you been to the pool yet?" It wasn't a casual inquiry. It was delivered with a certain weight, a quiet expectation, almost a challenge. As if my acceptance into Oakhaven's fabric hinged on my immediate embrace of its most sacred institution. I'd nod, smile, and promise I'd get around to it, all the while feeling a faint prickle of unease. Why the obsession? It was just a pool, wasn't it? My first visit to the Oakhaven Community Pool was on a sweltering July afternoon, the kind where the air hung heavy and thick, promising a storm that never quite broke. The heat was a living thing, pressing down on everything, wilting the petunias and making the asphalt shimmer. The pool complex itself was impressive for such a small town, an Olympic-sized marvel, with gleaming tiled lanes, diving boards that reached dizzying heights, and a meticulously kept deck. But as I approached the edge, something struck me, something that nudged at the edges of my memory, but felt profoundly different now. The water. It wasn't just blue. It was an unnaturally deep, almost inky sapphire, especially towards the far end. It drank the light. I'd swum in countless pools in my life, from hotel leisure pools to grand university facilities, but this one felt different, heavier, more vast somehow than its finite dimensions suggested, as if it held more than just water. A young lifeguard, a tall, earnest kid with a startlingly bright smile and a name tag that read David, greeted me with an overly enthusiastic welcome. He handed me a laminated sheet of rules. Most were standard. No running on the deck, no diving in the shallow end, shower before entering. But then I saw it, tucked away at the bottom, almost an afterthought, yet starkly highlighted in bold red font. Rule number 17. No swimming beyond the red buoy without prior authorization from a senior pool committee member. I frowned rereading it. A red buoy? In an Olympic pool? And senior pool committee member? It sounded less like a community recreation center, and more like something out of a secret society. David, catching my confusion, just chuckled, a sound that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Oh, that's just for the deep end, ma'am. It's pretty deep down there. We like to keep everyone safe." His explanation was too quick, too practiced, like a line he'd recited 1,000 times, designed to dismiss any further inquiry. Pretty deep. An understatement I'd soon learn. As I pushed off the edge and submerged myself, the coolness of the water was a welcome relief from the oppressive heat, but an odd sensation began to creep over me. When I pushed off the bottom in the shallow end, my feet seemed to sink further than they should, the tiles feeling impossibly distant beneath my toes. And as I ventured deeper towards the red buoy, the deep end truly felt like an abyss, a dark, inviting void that pulled at your gaze, promising to swallow you whole. The water grew colder too, as if an unseen current ran through its depths, pulling at me. I saw a few older men, serious-looking, their faces etched with a strange, almost ritualistic solemnity, doing laps beyond that red buoy. They moved with a practiced, powerful grace, their strokes unhurried, disappearing for what felt like impossibly long stretches beneath the dark water, only to resurface with a quiet gasp, their eyes holding a distant, almost reverent look, as if they just returned from another world. They never spoke to each other, never acknowledged anyone else. They simply swam, disappeared, and re-emerged, their faces holding a shared, unspoken secret. Later that week, I met Emily, a bubbly woman my age who ran the Daily Grind, the local coffee shop. She was one of the few people who didn't immediately bring up the pool, preferring to chat about books and the surprisingly good local bakery. We quickly became friends, sharing stories over iced lattes. One sweltering evening, as the cicadas buzzed with frantic energy outside the cafe window, I brought up my observations. "Emily," I began, trying to keep my tone light, "that pool, it's really deep, isn't it? And what's with rule number 17? It feels so formal for a community pool." Emily's bright smile faltered just for a second. Her gaze flickered to the window, then back to me, her eyes a little too bright, a little too fixed. "Oh, that's just Oakhaven being Oakhaven, Sarah. We take our pool very seriously. It's been here forever, you know. It's part of us. Like the old oak trees or the town clock. It's just how things are." The casualness of her reply didn't match the subtle, almost imperceptible shift in her demeanor. It was a practiced dismissal, a gentle but firm wall, designed to end the conversation before it truly began. It was then that I started noticing other things, small details that once seen couldn't be unseen. The way the town council meetings always seemed to have a disproportionate amount of time dedicated to pool maintenance, security, and special events, often overshadowing discussions about roads or schools, or even the upcoming mayoral election. The way people would speak about the pool in hushed, almost reverent tones, not like a recreational facility, but like a living, breathing entity that demanded respect, even devotion. Teenagers, usually rebellious and quick to scoff at authority, adhered strictly to the pool rules, especially rule number 17, with an almost fearful obedience. No one ever challenged it. No one ever even questioned it aloud except for me. And then there was the story I overheard, whispered between two older women at the grocery store, their voices barely audible above the hum of the refrigerators. They spoke of a local boy, Michael Thorne, who used to work at the pool. He'd been a star swimmer, everyone agreed, a natural in the water, destined for an athletic scholarship, a shining example of Oakhaven's youth. Then, one summer about 5 years ago, he just vanished. Not ran away, not moved to another town for college, not even a tragic accident that was publicly mourned. He simply ceased to exist, erased from the town's collective memory, his name only surfacing in hushed, furtive whispers, quickly shushed into silence whenever a stranger was near. When one of the women saw me listening, her eyes widened in alarm, and she quickly changed the subject to the rising price of organic kale, her face a mask of forced cheerfulness. It was as if Michael Thorne had never been. Yet his absence left a palpable, chilling void, a phantom limb in Oakhaven's perfect body. This wasn't just idle curiosity anymore. This was my new home. And my new home felt like it was built around a secret that shimmered and beckoned from the bottom of that impossibly deep pool. I found myself drawn to it not just for a swim but for answers. I started researching Oakhaven history, old town records, anything that might shed light on the pool's origins. The official story was always the same, repeated verbatim in every pamphlet and history book. Built in 1952 by community donations, a symbol of unity and progress. A heartwarming tale, but it felt hollow. I spent hours in the dusty archives of the town hall, poring over blueprints and construction permits. Most of the documents were mundane, detailing plumbing and filtration systems. But the architectural plans for the pool, specifically those pertaining to the deep end, were strangely vague. They lacked the precise measurements and structural details present in every other section. Instead, there were a series of question marks, faded notations, and a chilling note scrawled in faded red ink, almost hidden in the margin. Structural anomaly. Requires specialized consultation. Depth undetermined. Depth undetermined. That phrase echoed in my mind, a cold whisper in the quiet library. a stark contradiction to everything I thought I knew about engineering and public works. How could the depth of a community pool, a public amenity, be undetermined? What kind of structural anomaly would lead to such an omission? The more I dug, the more the surface story of Oakhaven began to unravel, revealing a deeper, darker narrative. The town wasn't just proud of its pool. It was obsessed with it. An obsession that bordered on reverence, on fear, on something far more primal. And the deeper I looked into that unnaturally sapphire water, the more I felt like something was looking back. Something ancient. Something powerful. Something that had claimed Michael Thorne. And I had a chilling premonition that I was about to discover exactly how deep the Oakhaven community pool truly was. And that once I did, there would be no going back. The premonition clung to me like a shroud. Michael's journal, clutched in my trembling hands, felt less like paper and more like a conduit to a truth I wasn't ready for. That symbol. It pulsed in my mind, a dark star against the black canvas of my fear. There was no going back, that much was clear. The only path open now was forward, into the abyss Michael had stumbled into. My first instinct was to understand the symbol. I devoured every corner of the internet, typing frantic queries into search engines: Oakhaven local legends, strange symbols Midwest, unexplained disappearances community pools. The results were a frustrating tangle of urban myths, forum discussions about Bigfoot sightings, and generic articles on water safety. Nothing concrete. Nothing that resonated with the chilling specificity of Michael's drawing. Yet, the symbol itself felt too ancient, too deliberate to be a random doodle, too significant to be a figment of a troubled mind. It hummed with a primal energy that seeped into my consciousness, making the air in my apartment feel heavy, charged. The internet, vast as it was, couldn't offer the deep, forgotten knowledge I instinctively knew I needed. This wasn't a modern mystery. This was something rooted in the soil, in the very bedrock of Oakhaven. My gaze fell upon an old, faded map of the town hung on my wall, a souvenir from a local antique shop. It predated the current community pool by decades. Tracing the lines with a finger that felt oddly cold, I found the exact location. The area wasn't marked as a recreational facility then, but bore a curious, almost poetic label: the Sunken Heart. The next morning found me at the Oakhaven Historical Society, a quiet, dusty building that smelled of old paper and forgotten secrets. Behind the main desk sat Agnes Miller, a woman whose wrinkles told stories the library walls couldn't. Her glasses perched on her nose, magnifying eyes that seemed to hold generations of Oakhaven's past. She offered a gentle, almost knowing smile. "Can I help you, dearie?" she asked, her voice soft but clear. I explained my interest in the history of the land where the community pool now stood, trying to keep my questions casual, detached. Agnes's gaze drifted, not to the shelves, but through the window, as if seeing beyond the modern street to something much older. "Oh, before the pool, dearie. It was just the hollow. Always a bit quiet down there. Folks tended to keep their distance even back then. Said the ground swallowed up the sound, made you feel alone." Her words were innocuous, yet they carried a faint tremor, a whisper of something more. I pressed on carefully. Were there any unusual stories associated with the hollow? Or any old symbols, perhaps from early settlers or indigenous tribes, tied to the water sources there? Her smile, usually so warm, thinned almost imperceptibly. A flicker of something: recognition, fear, crossed her eyes. She moved slowly, deliberately, to a back shelf, retrieving a slim leather-bound volume. "Just a bit of local flavor if you're interested in the real history, not just the official records," she murmured, handing me the book. Its title was embossed in faded gold: Oakhaven Echoes, Forgotten Lore and Legends. "Some things," she added, her voice barely above a whisper, "are best left undisturbed, young one. Old stories, like old bones, can sometimes rise up if you poke them too much." Her words sent a shiver down my spine, but the book in my hands felt like a beacon. I thanked her, my heart thrumming, and practically fled the Historical Society. Back in the relative safety of my apartment, I opened Oakhaven Echoes. It was a collection of quaint stories, local eccentrics, and charmingly superstitious tales. But one chapter, The Deep Heart, seized my attention. It spoke of a sacred spring, revered by the indigenous people long before Oakhaven existed. Not for healing, the text clarified, but for its power. A place where the veil between worlds was thin, where the earth breathed with an ancient, palpable force. The indigenous name for the area: The book explained, translated to the thirsty maw, or the devouring heart. And then I saw it, a crude, faded drawing accompanying the text, almost identical to the symbol Michael had etched into his journal. It was described as a binding mark, or a gatekeeper's sigil. The story spoke of rituals, offerings, and a great sleeper or ancient hunger beneath the earth, kept dormant by these symbols and the careful reverence of the land. It wasn't just a spring, it was a conduit, a pressure point, a place of immense, barely contained power. The pool wasn't just built over something, it was built into something. The revelations in the book compelled me to return to the pool that very evening. The sun was dipping below the horizon, casting long skeletal shadows across the deserted complex. The air grew heavy, thick with an almost palpable tension. The pool, usually vibrant with the echoes of laughter and splashing, was now an obsidian mirror under the burgeoning streetlights. The water was unnaturally still, not a ripple, not an insect disturbing its surface. A profound silence hung in the air, broken only by the frantic beat of my own heart. I felt a coldness emanating from the water, not just a physical chill, but a palpable dread that seeped into my bones, raising goosebumps on my arms. I peered into the depths, the darkness reflecting the streetlights in distorted, swirling patterns. For a fleeting moment, a shadow seemed to shift beneath the surface, a movement that my mind dismissed as imagination, but my gut screamed otherwise. It was too large, too deliberate to be a trick of the light. A profound presence settled over me, not human but vast, ancient, and terrifyingly aware. I felt a prickling sensation on my neck, the unmistakable feeling of being watched, not by a person, but by something formless, immense. Michael's journal entries about the hum and the whispers now made terrifying sense. He wasn't hallucinating. He was hearing the stirrings of something vast and ancient, something that had been dormant, perhaps deliberately contained for centuries. His attempts to understand and document it, were they an attempt to re-establish the binding? Or did his probing, his relentless curiosity, inadvertently awaken it? The final entry, the symbol, wasn't a warning from him, but a desperate, final attempt to contain what he had unleashed or discovered was already breaking free. The deeper than it looks wasn't a metaphor for hidden structures, or an unusually deep diving well. It was a metaphor for a boundless, hungry abyss that lay beneath Oakhaven, a gaping maw just barely covered by concrete and chlorinated water. My dreams became vivid, unsettling. Murky water, not clear blue but a churning opaque black. Grasping tendrils, not of seaweed, but of something sinuous and strong, reaching from the depths. And always that deep, resonant hum vibrating through my chest, shaking my very core. I saw shadows in my peripheral vision, coalescing into indistinct shapes, then dissipating when I turned my head. The air in my apartment felt colder, heavier. I was no longer an impartial observer. I was becoming entangled. Driven by a desperate need for more answers, I returned to the Historical Society, this time seeking out obscure government documents or town records from the mid-20th century. Agnes Miller merely watched me with her knowing eyes, offering no further warnings, only a quiet sigh as I dug through dusty boxes. Finally, tucked away in a mislabeled file, I found it. A faded report from the 1950s detailing a series of structural issues during the pool's initial construction. Not just cracks, but unexplained subsidence and anomalous energy readings. The report went on to describe a specialized team brought in, not engineers, but experts in pre-geological formations and anomalous energetic phenomena. Their conclusion, heavily redacted, chilled me to the bone. The underlying structure is not geological, it is sentient, and it is awakening. A footnote, almost entirely obscured, provided the chilling connection. Containment measures, utilizing ancient sigils and vibrational frequencies, are being implemented to maintain dormancy. Any disturbance could be catastrophic. Michael's symbol was one of these sigils. He wasn't just documenting it. He was interacting with it, perhaps trying to understand or reinforce it. The realization hit me like a tidal wave. Michael didn't just drown. He was pulled in, not by water, but by something that had been dormant for centuries, something he had inadvertently disturbed, something that had been barely contained. And now I had disturbed it too. The Oakhaven community pool wasn't just a place of recreation. It was a prison, and its inmate was now stirring, perhaps because of me. The realization hit me like a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. The Oakhaven community pool wasn't just a place of recreation. It was a prison, and its inmate was now stirring, perhaps because of me. My mind raced, trying to reconcile the familiar sun-drenched image of splashing kids and echoing laughter with this chilling new truth. How could something so benign, so central to our community, harbor such a dark secret? And what exactly was this inmate? A forgotten creature of myth? A metaphorical entity, a burden of history? Or something far more tangible and terrifying? I stumbled back from my computer, the glow of David's cryptic message still burning in my retina. The silence of my apartment, usually a comfort, now felt heavy, oppressive, as if the very air was listening. I tried to call David, my fingers fumbling with my phone. No answer. I tried again. Straight to voicemail. A knot tightened in my stomach. David, the man who knew the pool's secrets, the man who had warned me, was now unreachable. Had he gone into hiding? Or had whatever he disturbed, whatever I had now disturbed, finally caught up to him? The thought sent a shiver down my spine. Sleep was impossible. Every creak of the old house, every rustle of leaves outside, sounded like a whisper, a warning. I kept seeing the shimmering, inky blackness of the deep end, imagining something vast and unseen stirring beneath the surface. The next morning, fueled by cold coffee and a desperate need for answers, I started digging. I wasn't going to just sit and wait for whatever was stirring to fully awaken. My first stop was the Oak Haven Public Library, a quiet brick building that smelled of old paper and dust. I buried myself in local archives, old town council meeting minutes, and yellowed newspaper clippings. The pool, it turned out, had a surprisingly sparse and uneventful history on the surface. Built in the late 1960s, a gift from a wealthy, reclusive family named the Thorns who had since moved away, it was hailed as a marvel of modern engineering for its time. But as I delved deeper, sifting through microfiche of decades-old local news, a few anomalies began to surface. There were vague mentions of construction delays, attributed to unforeseen geological challenges. A brief article from 1968 reported a minor incident where a section of the deep end's foundation had shifted unexpectedly, requiring extensive re-engineering. The language was sterile, bureaucratic, but it hinted at something more than just unstable earth. And then, a series of peculiar reports from the early 1970s, several instances of unusual water conditions. Not just algae blooms, but descriptions of unnatural turbidity, unexplained temperature fluctuations, and even a strange, metallic sheen on the water's surface that defied chemical treatment. These reports would always be followed by reassurances from the Oak Haven Pool Committee that all issues have been rectified, and the water quality is within acceptable parameters. But reading between the lines, the pattern was clear. Something was wrong with the pool, and it had been wrong from the very beginning. I found a faded photograph from the pool's grand opening, a sea of smiling faces, proud council members, and children eagerly awaiting their first swim. In the background, almost hidden by the crowd, was a banner proclaiming, "Oak Haven Pool, a new depth of community." The phrase, once a testament to civic pride, now felt chillingly prophetic. A new depth indeed. Leaving the library, I felt a familiar unease settle over me. The pool was a fixture, an icon of the town, yet its foundations seemed to rest on something profoundly unsettling. As I walked through the town square, my mind still replaying snippets of old news, I noticed an elderly woman, Martha Jenkins, sitting on a bench meticulously knitting. Martha had lived in Oak Haven her entire life, a living encyclopedia of local lore and gossip. She was exactly the kind of person who might know things that never made it into official records. I approached cautiously. "Good morning, Martha," I said, trying to sound casual. "Beautiful day for knitting." She peered at me over her spectacles, a knowing glint in her eyes. "Oh, it's you. Still poking around that old pool, are we?" Her tone wasn't accusatory, but it held a weary resignation. My heart quickened. "You know about that?" She chuckled, a dry rustling sound. "Everyone knows something, dear. They just don't talk about it. Not anymore." She paused, her needles clicking softly. "That pool. It's always been a strange one. Built on bad ground, they said. Old man Hemlock, he owned the land before the Thorns bought it. He always claimed there was a spring there. Not just any spring, mind you. A cold spring. Deep, deep down. Said it had its own heartbeat, that spring did." "A heartbeat?" I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "Aye," she nodded, her gaze distant. "He said it was a place where the earth breathed. And sometimes," her voice dropped, "sometimes when the earth breathes out, it brings things with it. things that should stay buried. She looked directly at me then, her eyes surprisingly sharp. The thorns, they tried to cap it, seal it, build over it. Thought they could tame it with concrete and chlorine. Foolish. You can't cage the wild, not forever. What did they try to cage, Martha? I pressed my throat tight. She just shook her head, a sad smile playing on her lips. Some secrets are like deep water, dear. The more you stir them, the foggier they get. And if you stir too much, you might just drown. Her words hung in the air, a chilling echo of David's own warnings. I thanked her, my mind reeling. A cold spring with a heartbeat. Something that should stay buried. It wasn't just a metaphor anymore. It was starting to sound like something ancient, elemental, an entity connected to the very land beneath Oakhaven. That night, an irresistible pull drew me back to the pool. Not during the day, when it was bustling with life, but under the cloak of darkness. The air was cool and still, carrying the faint metallic tang of chlorine mixed with something else, something earthy and damp, a smell I was beginning to associate with the pool's hidden nature. The moon cast long, skeletal shadows across the empty deck. The water, usually a vibrant blue in daylight, was a dark, obsidian mirror, reflecting the sparse streetlights and the distant glow of the town. It looked impossibly deep, a swirling abyss. I walked towards the deep end, my footsteps echoing unnervingly in the silence. The air grew colder as I approached, a distinct chill radiating from the water itself. I knelt at the edge, peering into the blackness. For a moment I thought I saw something move. A subtle shift in the water that wasn't a ripple from the automatic skimmers. My heart hammered against my ribs. Was it my imagination, or was the inmate truly stirring? My gaze drifted along the pool wall, searching for anything unusual. And then I saw it. Near the very bottom of the deep end, almost invisible against the dark tiling, was a faint, almost indecipherable symbol. It wasn't a modern marking. It looked carved ancient, weathered by decades of water. It was a spiral, but not a simple one. It was a complex, interlocking pattern, reminiscent of some archaic tribal art, but with an unsettling asymmetry, as if it was drawing you inward deeper and deeper. I gasped, my breath fogging in the cool night air. This wasn't just a pool. It was a gateway, a seal, and the symbol, whatever it was, felt like a lock barely holding something back. As I stared, hypnotized by the strange carving, a low hum vibrated through the concrete beneath my fingertips. It wasn't the hum of the filtration system. It was deeper, more resonant, a sound that seemed to come from the very core of the earth. And then a faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through the water, causing the spiral symbol to distort and waver in its reflection. A sudden, overwhelming sense of dread washed over me. This wasn't just about a strange smell or a missing maintenance worker anymore. This was about something primal, something ancient that had been slumbering beneath our feet, beneath the very heart of Oakhaven. And now, thanks to David's accidental discovery, and my subsequent poking and prodding, it was waking up. The hum intensified, a low thrumming that seemed to resonate within my own bones. The air grew heavy, thick with an unseen pressure. The water, that dark, reflective surface, seemed to swell, a barely perceptible rise and fall, as if a giant unseen chest was slowly breathing beneath it. The inmate was not just stirring, it was becoming aware. And it was aware of me. I scrambled back, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I had to get out, to put distance between myself and that ominous pool. But as I turned to flee, my foot kicked something on the concrete deck. I looked down. It was a small, crudely carved wooden figurine, damp and almost swallowed by the shadows. It depicted a vaguely humanoid figure, its face contorted in an expression of silent agony, its arms outstretched as if reaching, or perhaps, as if struggling to escape something unseen. Clutched in its wooden hand was a tiny folded piece of paper. My name was scrawled on it, in David's unmistakable handwriting, followed by a single terrifying word: awakened. The word awakened pulsed in my mind, a chilling echo that resonated far deeper than the faded ink on the paper. My hands trembled, the small wooden doll suddenly feeling heavy, ancient, imbued with an unspoken dread. David's familiar script, so ordinary, now seemed like a desperate cry from beyond, a final cryptic message before he vanished entirely. Awakened? What had awakened? David himself? Or something in him? Or something around him? My gaze darted around the quiet, ordinary room, the sun slanting through the blinds, casting warm, innocuous stripes across the carpet. But the warmth felt like a lie. The air, which had moments ago been merely still, now felt charged, heavy, as if holding its breath. I carefully unfolded the paper, smoothing out the creases. It was just that one word, awakened, beneath my name. No explanation, no plea, just that stark, terrifying declaration. It felt less like a warning and more like a statement of fact, a confirmation of something David had witnessed, or perhaps become a part of. He hadn't just drowned. He had found something, or something had found him, and it had awakened. The doll itself was a crude, primitive thing, carved from dark, heavy wood. Its features were barely discernible, two small dots for eyes, a slash for a mouth. But there was a strange intensity to its posture, that upward reach, that struggle. I turned it over in my hands, feeling the rough grain under my fingertips. There were no markings, no artist's signature, nothing to indicate its origin. It felt old, incredibly old, like something unearthed from centuries past. How had David come across such an object? And why, of all things, would he leave it for me? A cold wave of realization washed over me. David wasn't just leaving a message, he was leaving a key. This doll, this word, they were pieces of a puzzle he hadn't been able to solve, or perhaps, had only just begun to understand before it consumed him. My phone buzzed, a text from Jessica. Any luck? I'm still digging into old newspaper archives. So far, nothing on the pool deaths that isn't already public. Just tragic accidents. I stared at her message, then back at the doll and the word. Tragic accidents. But David's message, this doll, they screamed otherwise. This wasn't an accident. This was something else entirely. Something deliberate. Something ancient. I typed back, my fingers still a little shaky. Found something. David left me a doll. And a note. Just one word. Awakened. The ellipsis appeared almost immediately then. A doll? What kind of doll? And awakened? What does that even mean? I don't know, Jess. It's an old wooden thing. Feels strange. And the word, it feels like a warning. Like a confession. Okay, this is getting weirder. Meet me for coffee in an hour? My place is closer to the library. Maybe we can combine forces. Be there. I placed the doll carefully on my desk, the note beside it. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Not by anyone in particular, but by the doll itself, by the silent, wooden agony etched into its crude form. It was a conduit, a messenger, and now its message had been delivered. The drive to Jessica's place felt different. The familiar streets, the bustling storefronts, the laughter of kids playing in their yards. It all seemed to exist on a separate plane, a thin veneer over a deeper, more unsettling reality. David's death, once a personal tragedy, now felt like the first ripple in a pond whose depths I was only just beginning to glimpse. And that pond, I realized with a jolt, was the community pool. Deeper than it looks. The phrase from the old flyer suddenly took on a sinister new meaning. Jessica was already brewing coffee when I arrived, her brow furrowed in concern. "Show me," she said, her voice hushed as soon as I walked through the door. I pulled the doll and the note from my bag, laying them on her kitchen counter. Jessica leaned in, her eyes widening as she examined the rough carving, then the single word on the paper. "Awakened," she murmured, tracing the letters with a finger. "It sounds biblical. Or like something out of a horror movie." "It feels like both," I replied, running a hand through my hair. "He didn't just drown, Jess. He stumbled onto something. And whatever it was, it left him this." "But why you?" she asked, looking up at me. "Why not his parents? Or Sarah?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe he thought I'd believe him. Maybe he knew I wouldn't just write it off as an accident." A part of me wondered if it was because I had been there, at the pool that night. If I had seen something, felt something, even subconsciously. "This doll," Jessica said, picking it up gingerly. "It's unsettling. It doesn't look like anything I've ever seen. No modern toy store, no antique shop. It looks tribal. Primitive." "That's what I thought," I agreed. "And it feels ancient. Like it's been around for centuries." "Centuries," Jessica echoed, her eyes narrowing in thought. "Okay, let's think. If David found this, where would he have found it? The pool itself? Unlikely. Unless it was buried in the ground around it, or somehow preserved in the filtration system." She shuddered at the thought of the latter. Or maybe he found it somewhere else, and that's the connection to the pool. What if it's connected to the town's history? I suggested. Before the pool was built? What was here before? Jessica's eyes lit up. Now that is the lead. I've been looking at pool records but not the land itself. Our town Oakhaven isn't that old officially, founded in the late 1800s, but there must have been something here before. Farms? Native American settlements? Something that could explain a doll like this. Exactly, I said, feeling a surge of purpose. This isn't about David drowning anymore. It's about what awaken means and what this doll represents. Okay, Jessica said, her investigative instincts kicking in. You stay here, start researching Oakhaven's early history online. Look for anything about the specific land the pool is on. Old maps, property records, even local folklore. I'm going to head back to the library. They have an archives section, a local history collection. Maybe there's something in a dusty old book no one's looked at in decades. We worked in silence for a while, the only sounds the tapping of keys and the rustle of papers. My online search for Oakhaven pre-settlement history and Oakhaven local legends yielded mostly generic results. Agricultural land, a few mentions of Native American hunting grounds, but nothing specific to the area of the pool. No ancient curses, no forgotten gods, no creepy dolls. It was frustrating. The internet, for all its vastness, felt too modern for the kind of ancient dread this doll exuded. After about an hour, Jessica called, her voice tight with excitement. I found something. Maybe. It's obscure. In an old town almanac from 1903, there's a small section, almost an aside, about the Whispering Waters. It talks about an old spring, used by the early settlers, that was believed to have unusual properties. Local superstition, they called it. Nothing about dolls, but it mentions strange currents and things seen in the depths by those who drank from it. Whispering Waters? I repeated, a chill running down my spine. And it was a spring? Yes, Jessica confirmed. And get this, the almanac mentions that the spring was eventually covered over, deemed unsafe, due to a string of unexplained disappearances in the late 1800s, right before Oakhaven was officially established. They built a public bathhouse over it in the 1920s, and then that was demolished for the community pool in the 1960s. My heart hammered in my chest. So the pool, it's built directly over an ancient, superstitious spring that had disappearances associated with it? It seems that way, Jessica said, her voice barely a whisper. And the almanac says the spring was thought to be a gateway, a place where the veil between worlds was thin, and that sometimes, things from the other side could be awakened. The word hit me like a physical blow. Awakened. The same word David had scrawled on the paper. This wasn't a coincidence. This was the connection. The pool wasn't just deep. It was built on top of something ancient, something dangerous, something that had a history of claiming lives. Jessica, I said, my voice barely steady, we need to go to the pool. Not to swim, but to look. To find out where this spring was exactly, and what it means for David, and for all those others who drowned. A moment of silence, then Jessica's voice, resolute. I'm already on my way back. Meet me there. And bring the doll. My mind raced. The Whispering Waters. A gateway. Things from the other side. And the doll clutched in David's wooden hand, reaching, struggling. Was it a representation of those who had been taken? Or a warning from someone who had glimpsed the other side? The ordinary community pool, a place of summer laughter and innocent splashes, was now revealing itself as something far more sinister. A portal to an unknown horror that had lain dormant for decades, perhaps centuries, only to be awakened. And David, my friend, had been the one to unearth it, or perhaps to set it free. The thought sent a shiver of dread straight through me, a premonition that our investigation was about to drag us into depths far more terrifying than any murky water. The thought sent a shiver of dread straight through me, a premonition that our investigation was about to drag us into depths far more terrifying than any murky water. I found David later that evening, pacing his living room, the blinds drawn tight against the fading light. His face was a mask of conflicting emotions, fear, exhilaration, and a profound, unsettling awe. He held something in his hands, something wrapped in an old towel, almost reverently. What is it, David? My voice was barely a whisper, thick with trepidation. He looked up, his eyes wide and unfocused, as if still gazing into the dark heart of the pool. Slowly, deliberately, he unwrapped the towel. It wasn't a bone or a map, or anything I could immediately identify. It was a stone, but unlike any stone I had ever seen. Roughly the size of a small brick, it was obsidian dark, with a surface that seemed to absorb all light, yet shimmered with an unnatural, almost oily sheen when it caught the faint lamp glow. Its edges were sharp, almost too perfect to be natural, and across its face ran intricate carvings. They weren't hieroglyphs I recognized, nor any human language I knew. They looked like flowing water patterns, twisting and coiling, interspersed with angular, almost mechanical glyphs that seemed to pulse with a silent energy. I reached out, but David pulled it back slightly. "Careful," he murmured, his voice hoarse. "It's cold. Not just cool, but unnaturally cold. Like it's radiating chill, not just absorbing it." He was right. Even from a foot away, I could feel a distinct drop in temperature emanating from the object. It felt wrong, alien, like something that shouldn't exist in our world. Where did you find this?" I asked, my gaze fixed on the unsettling stone. David finally sat down, the stone resting on his lap, still radiating its strange cold. "The structure," he began, his voice gaining a strange intensity. "I went back down after you left. I couldn't shake the feeling. I kept thinking about Sarah, about Mark, about the currents, about your feeling of something watching you. I felt like I had to go deeper, to find what was really there." He paused, taking a shaky breath. "The old structure, it's not just a foundation. It's like some kind of ancient submerged building. The walls are smooth, almost perfectly cut, but the stone is unlike anything around here. And there are fissures, deep cracks that go down even further. I was exploring one of them, shining my light into the blackness when I saw it, wedged in a crevice, almost like it was meant to be hidden, but also almost like it was pushed out, expelled." He gestured to the stone. It was glowing faintly, just a barely perceptible pulse deep in that crack. I had to pry it out. It was stuck, almost fused with the rock around it. When it finally came free, there was this sound. Not a loud sound, more like a deep, resonant hum that vibrated through the water, through my bones. And then the current changed. It got stronger, colder, and I felt like 100 eyes were suddenly on me, staring out of the darkness. A cold dread seeped into my own bones, mirroring the chill from the stone. 100 eyes. "Yeah," David whispered, running a thumb over one of the strange glyphs. "And I heard something, like whispers but not actual words, more like the sound of wind through a cavern, but with an underlying, almost intelligent cadence. That's when I knew I had to get out. I grabbed this and I swam for the surface like my life depended on it." We spent the next few hours poring over the stone, trying to decipher its meaning. We searched online for similar ancient artifacts, symbols, anything that might give us a clue. Nothing. The patterns were unique, the material unknown. The cold it radiated was constant, unwavering. And the feeling David described of being watched, of whispers, it started to settle over me too. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind outside, seemed amplified, imbued with a sinister intent. We were no longer just investigating a mystery, we were holding a piece of it, and it felt like it was holding a piece of us back. The strangeness didn't stop there. Over the next few days, with the stone hidden away in David's apartment, subtle shifts began to occur. Our sleep became restless, plagued by vivid, unsettling dreams. I dreamt of endless dark water, of submerged cities, and of a silent, immense presence lurking just beyond the edge of my sight. David reported similar nightmares, but his were more specific. He dreamt of the pool, of the old structure, and of a faint, pulsing light emanating from the stone, drawing him deeper into the abyss. The pool itself seemed to grow more active. Local news, usually starved for exciting headlines, reported an increase in unusual currents and cold spots, even in the shallower areas. Swimmers complained of an inexplicable unease, a feeling of being watched from the depths. Some even claimed to hear faint, distant humming sounds while underwater, sounds that were quickly dismissed as imagination or faulty acoustics. But we knew better. We knew we needed an expert, someone who understood ancient history, forgotten languages, or obscure geological phenomena. After a few dead ends and dismissive university professors, we got a tip from a local librarian about a retired history professor, Eleanor Vance. She was known for her eccentric theories and a deep, almost obsessive knowledge of local folklore and forgotten histories. She lived in a small, cluttered house on the outskirts of town, filled with books, maps, and artifacts from centuries past. Eleanor was a spry woman in her late 70s, with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. When we cautiously presented the stone, She didn't recoil or dismiss it as a hoax. Instead, a slow, knowing smile spread across her face, a smile that sent a chill down my spine. "Well, well," she said, her voice raspy but clear. "So, it's finally been disturbed. I wondered how long it would take." David and I exchanged a stunned look. You know what this is?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Eleanor chuckled, a dry rustling sound. "I know of it. Or rather, I know of what it represents. This town wasn't always called Willow Creek, you know. Its original name centuries ago was Deepwater's Rest. A peculiar name even back then, considering there were no major rivers or lakes nearby, just the springs. But the earliest settlers, before the current town was even laid out, they spoke of something different. Something ancient and powerful beneath the ground." She picked up the stone, her fingers gnarled with age, tracing the strange glyphs with an uncanny familiarity. They believed this spring, the one the pool is built over, was not merely a natural phenomenon. They saw it as a gateway, a place where the veil between worlds was thin, where immense unpredictable power could spill through. There was a small, isolated community here long before the first colonists arrived. A sect, some called them. They didn't worship gods in the traditional sense. They worshipped the depths. The void. My blood ran cold. The void. The endless depth of the pool. They built structures, Eleanor continued, her eyes distant, lost in the past. Not for living but for rituals. To contain or perhaps to channel this power. They believed that if unbalanced, this power could consume everything. This, my young friends, she held up the dark stone, is what they called a deep stone. A keystone, a regulator, maybe even a key. It was part of a larger mechanism, designed to keep something dormant, something contained beneath the surface. David swallowed hard. Contained? What was contained? Eleanor's gaze sharpened, fixing on us with an intensity that made me feel entirely exposed. They didn't have a name for it that we would understand. They spoke of a whispering hunger, an ancient current, something that draws, that consumes, that seeks to expand. They believed it could manifest through the waters, through the cold, through the dreams of those who ventured too close. She put the deep stone back on her table, carefully, almost reverently. For centuries it lay undisturbed. The structures kept it sealed. The deep stone kept it regulated. But over time the knowledge faded. The town grew, the pool was built, and the old ways were forgotten. Until now. Her eyes narrowed. "You found this in the old structure, didn't you? Embedded in a fissure." We nodded, speechless. "Then you've done more than just unearth an artifact," she said, her voice dropping to a grave whisper. "You've disturbed the seal. You've woken something up. This stone, it was meant to be in place. It was part of the mechanism. By removing it, you haven't just found a key. You've unlocked a door." A cold, undeniable certainty settled in my gut. The whispers David heard, the feeling of being watched, the intensifying currents, the nightmares. They weren't just coincidence or our overactive imaginations. They were symptoms. Symptoms of something stirring, something awakening. "What happens now?" David asked, his voice barely audible. Eleanor sighed, a sound heavy with ancient weariness. "Now the balance is broken. The currents will grow stronger. The dreams will become clearer. And the hunger, it will seek. It will seek to reestablish its connection, to draw more into its depths. And it will start with those who disturbed its slumber." Just as she finished speaking, a faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through the floor. A low hum, like the distant thrum of an immense submerged engine, seemed to vibrate through the very air. The deep stone, lying innocently on Eleanor's table, suddenly pulsed with a faint internal light, the strange glyphs briefly flaring with a cold blue luminescence. It wasn't just cold anymore, it felt alive. We had indeed unlocked a door, and whatever lay beyond it was now reaching back. The community pool wasn't just deeper than it looked. It was a hungry mouth, and we had just offered it the first taste. The world tilted. The air, already frigid, plummeted to a temperature that felt less like cold and more like a physical assault, a vacuum sucking the warmth right out of our bones. It wasn't just the air, though. It was the water. The previously still, murky surface of the pool began to ripple, not from wind or current, but from an unseen force churning beneath, like a colossal beast stirring in its sleep. A low guttural hum vibrated through the concrete, up our legs and into our very teeth. It was a sound that didn't belong to this world. A sound of immense pressure and ancient, awakening power. Jessica screamed, a sharp, piercing sound that was instantly swallowed by the deepening hum. Michael, usually the picture of stoicism, stumbled backward, his eyes wide with terror I'd never seen him display. David grabbed Emily's arm, pulling her away from the edge, his face pale and etched with disbelief. And I felt a sensation like icy fingers brushing against my ankles, not from the water, but from the very ground, from the air itself. It was as if the pool was exhaling, a breath so profoundly alien that it stole the very oxygen from our lungs. We scrambled, a chaotic mess of limbs and panicked gasps, away from the concrete lip. The hum intensified, throbbing in our chests, making our vision swim. The ripples on the water's surface grew larger, more violent, though the water itself remained unnaturally still, a dark, churning mirror reflecting nothing but our own horror. It was a paradox, still yet violently agitated, silent yet roaring with an internal sound that threatened to shatter our sanity. We didn't stop until we were huddled together near the entrance gate, far from the pool's edge, our backs pressed against the chain-link fence, gasping for breath in the suddenly heavy, oppressive air. What was that? Emily whispered, her voice trembling, barely audible above the lingering phantom hum in our ears. Her eyes, usually so bright with curiosity, were now pools of pure fear. Michael ran a hand through his hair, his face a mask of confusion and adrenaline. I don't know. A power surge? Some kind of old machinery kicking on. His voice lacked conviction, even to himself. He was trying to rationalize it, to find a logical explanation for the utterly illogical. But the profound, bone-deep cold, the sense of an ancient presence, the psychic touch that felt like a violation, none of that fit into any rational framework. Jessica was shaking, tears streaming down her face. No, it wasn't machinery. It felt like something woke up. Something evil. She hugged herself tightly, her eyes darting back to the dark, indifferent surface of the pool. The ripples had subsided, leaving the water once again unnervingly still. But the cold remained, a pervasive, clinging presence that seeped into our clothes and our skin. David, ever the practical one, tried to take charge. Okay, let's breathe. We need to think. What did we do? Was it that switch, that lever? He pointed a shaky finger back towards the spot where we had found the mechanism. I nodded, still feeling the icy brush against my skin. It has to be. The moment I pushed it. That's when it started. The cold, the feeling. I trailed off, unable to articulate the full scope of the terror. It wasn't just a physical sensation. It was a profound existential dread, a knowing that we had disturbed something vast and terrible. It felt like it was looking at us, Jessica sobbed. Like it was hungry. Her words hung in the air, echoing my own unspoken thought from moments earlier. A hungry mouth. We had offered it the first taste. What did that even mean? What could a pool, a mere body of water, be hungry for? We stood there for what felt like an eternity, the silence punctuated only by our ragged breathing and the distant chirping of crickets, which now sounded utterly alien in the face of what we had just experienced. The air around the pool shimmered faintly, a subtle distortion that made the night seem even darker, deeper. Finally, Michael, his initial shock giving way to a more determined, albeit still terrified, expression, spoke. We can't just leave it. Not after that. We have to figure out what that thing is. What we did. Emily, surprisingly, was the next to speak, her voice still a whisper but with a newfound steel to it. My grandmother, she used to tell stories about this place. About the old pool. She said it was built on unsettled ground. Said there were whispers even back when she was a little girl about things disappearing. Strange currents pulling people under, even in shallow water. They always just said it was accidents, but she swore there was something more. She looked at us, her eyes wide. She called it the drain to nowhere. A chill that had nothing to do with the lingering cold snaked down my spine. The drain to nowhere. It sounded like something out of a nightmare, a portal, a maw. David, ever the skeptic, tried to interject. Emily, that's just old wives' tales. You're letting your imagination run wild because we're spooked. But even as he said it, his gaze kept drifting back to the pool, his voice lacking its usual conviction. He was trying to convince himself as much as us. Is it, David? I challenged, my voice hoarse. Did you feel that old wives' tale brush against your skin? Did you hear that old wives' tale hum in your bones? He fell silent, his eyes fixed on the murky water. He couldn't deny what we had all experienced. The collective terror, the shared sensations, the undeniable shift in the atmosphere. It was too real, too profound to be dismissed as imagination or coincidence. We activated something, Michael concluded, his voice low and serious. Something ancient, something powerful. And now it knows we're here. It knows we touched it. The implication hung heavy in the air. The community pool wasn't just a place anymore. It was an entity, and we had just announced our presence. We had peeked behind the curtain, and now whatever was behind it was peeking back, with a hunger that was palpable. So what do we do? Jessica asked, her voice still shaky but tinged with a desperate curiosity. The fear was still there, but a morbid fascination, a need to understand, was starting to take hold. It was the thrill-seeker's curse, the compulsion to look even when every instinct screamed to run. We find out more, I said, the words coming out almost automatically. The thought of walking away, of leaving this untold horror to fester, felt impossible. We had opened this door, and now we were compelled to walk through it, or at least to peer deeper into the darkness beyond. Emily, your grandmother's stories, are there more? Any old records? Anything about the pool's construction, its history before it became the community pool? Emily nodded slowly, her fear giving way to a focused determination. She kept a journal, full of local lore, old news clippings, things she collected over the years. I never paid much attention to the pool entries before, thought they were just ramblings. But now, she looked at the pool, a strange mixture of dread and resolve in her eyes. Now I think she was right all along. Michael pulled out his phone, his hand still trembling slightly. I'll try to dig up Old Town archives, historical societies, anything about the land it's built on, any strange incidents reported in the past. David, though still visibly shaken, seemed to find a purpose in the plan. I can help with that. Maybe there's some kind of geological survey, something about underground springs or, I don't know, sinkholes. He was still clinging to a scientific explanation, but his voice lacked conviction. We had stepped into a different world tonight. The comfortable, mundane reality of our small town had fractured, revealing a chilling ancient truth beneath its surface. The community pool wasn't just deeper than it looked. It was a hungry mouth, and we had just offered it the first taste of our attention, our fear, and our unwitting curiosity. And now it wasn't letting us go. We were tethered to it, bound by the invisible threads of the unknown, compelled to unravel its dark secrets, even if it meant risking everything. The night was far from over, but the true nightmare had only just begun. We left the pool that night, but the pool I knew had not left us. Its cold, unseen gaze followed us, a silent promise of what was yet to come. The days that followed blurred into a waking nightmare, each moment tainted by the memory of that night. We tried to talk, to process, to rationalize, but the words felt hollow, inadequate to describe the icy grip that had seized us. The pool, once a symbol of summer freedom, had transformed into a gaping maw, its depths holding secrets we never wanted to uncover. Jessica, usually the most grounded of us, became withdrawn. Her eyes, perpetually wide, seemed to scan the periphery, as if expecting something to emerge from the shadows. David, who had always met fear with bravado, was a ghost of his former self, his usual jokes replaced by a chilling silence. Emily, ever the skeptic, found herself caught in a horrifying limbo, unable to deny what she'd seen, yet desperately clinging to the hope that it was all a shared delusion, a mass hallucination brought on by stress and fear. And I couldn't shake the feeling of being perpetually wet, a phantom chill seeping into my bones, no matter how warm the room. Every shadow seemed to stretch and ripple. Every distant gurgle of pipes sounded like the pool calling out. Sleep offered no escape. Night after night the dreams came. Always the water, dark, murky, pulling us down. Sometimes I'd see a flicker, a pale, distorted face beneath the surface, its features indistinct, yet radiating an ancient, profound sorrow. Other times I'd be standing at the edge of the deepest end, the water black and still, reflecting nothing but an endless void. I'd wake up gasping, my sheets tangled, my heart hammering against my ribs, the phantom scent of chlorine and decay clinging to my nostrils. We tried to resume our normal lives. We went to work, to classes, we even tried to meet up for coffee, but the conversation would inevitably gravitate back to that night. The unspoken questions hung heavy in the air. What had we seen? What had we awakened? And most terrifyingly, what was it doing now? The subtle manifestations began almost immediately. At Emily's apartment, her bathroom faucet started dripping incessantly, a slow, rhythmic plink, plink, plink that echoed through her quiet space, even after she tightened it repeatedly. She called a plumber who found nothing wrong. The drip continued. David's basement, usually dry as a bone, developed an inexplicable damp patch on the concrete floor, right in the center, always cool to the touch and never drying completely. He swore he could smell stagnant water, a faint metallic odor, whenever he went down there. Jessica's usually reliable car started having electrical issues, the dashboard lights flickering erratically, especially when it rained, or when she drove past the community center where the pool was located. It felt like the world around us was slowly, subtly, becoming saturated with the pool's influence. For me, it was the cold, an unnatural cold, not the chill of winter, but a penetrating damp cold that seemed to emanate from within the walls of my own home. My thermostat would be set to a comfortable 72 degrees, yet I'd shiver, goosebumps rising on my arms. Sometimes I'd walk into a room and feel a distinct drop in temperature, a localized pocket of frigid air that would dissipate as quickly as it appeared, leaving me questioning my own sanity. We avoided the community pool. The very thought of it sent shivers down our spines. We took detours to avoid driving past the community center, our eyes darting away from the building, as if a mere glance could draw us back into its gravitational pull. But the pool, it seemed, wasn't content to be ignored. Its presence seeped into our lives, a slow, insidious poison. One evening, about a week after our terrifying encounter, we gathered at my place, a silent agreement to confront the elephant in the room. The air was thick with unspoken fear, the kind that makes your throat tighten and your palms sweat. "This isn't going away," Emily said, her voice quiet but firm. She was clutching a mug of tea, her knuckles white. The faucet, David's basement, Jessica's car. "And Michael, you look like you haven't slept in days." "I haven't," I admitted, running a hand through my hair. "The dreams, they're getting worse. It's like the pool is trying to show me something." Jessica finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "I found something in my car, under the passenger seat." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small tarnished silver locket. It was old, intricately carved with a swirling pattern that vaguely resembled waves. "It wasn't there before. I cleaned my car last week. It just appeared." My blood ran cold. "Did you touch it?" "Only to pick it up," she said, her eyes wide. "It was freezing, and it smells faintly of chlorine." David stared at the locket, then at Jessica. "We have to do something. We can't just wait for whatever it is to come for us." "But what can we do?" Emily countered, her pragmatic nature warring with her fear. "Call the police? Tell them a haunted pool is dripping water into our lives and leaving us weird jewelry." "We need answers," I said, a sudden resolve hardening my voice. "We need to know what that thing was. What's in that pool? What its history is." "Are you serious?" David asked, his face pale. "You want to go back there? Or dig into whatever dark past it has?" "Not back to the pool," I clarified, "but back into its past. There has to be something. This can't be random. Nothing just appears out of nowhere like this." Emily, surprisingly, was the first to agree. "He's right. If we understand what it is, maybe we can figure out how to stop it. Or at least survive it." Her gaze flickered to the locket in Jessica's hand. "That locket. It looks old. It could be a clue." And so, our terrifying investigation began. Our first stop was the local public library, a quiet, unassuming brick building filled with the comforting scent of old paper and dust. We huddled around a microfiche reader, scrolling through decades of local newspapers, starting from the year the community center and pool were built, according to the plaque outside. The initial articles were mundane. Groundbreaking ceremonies, enthusiastic reports about community spirit, swimming lessons, summer events. But as we delved deeper, moving into older records, things began to shift. We found a series of peculiar reports from the late 1960s, just a few years after the pool's construction. Not about the pool directly, but about unexplained disappearances in the surrounding area. Small, isolated cases, initially dismissed as runaways or people leaving town without a trace. A teenage boy, a young woman, an elderly recluse. No bodies, no leads. The police reports were inconclusive, filled with dead ends. "This is too vague," David muttered, squinting at a grainy photograph of a missing person poster. "Could be anything." Maybe, Emily conceded. But look at the dates. They cluster around the same time. And this one. She pointed to an article from 1971. A construction worker, Ronald Miller, vanished from a nearby site. Said he was working on a deep excavation project for the city. No trace. My blood ran cold again. Deep excavation project? For the city. We cross-referenced the dates and locations. The construction site Ronald Miller was working on was less than a mile from where the community pool now stood. The article mentioned the project was related to water infrastructure improvements. Water infrastructure. I repeated, the words tasting like ash. Could it be connected to the pool's water source? Or something under the pool? Jessica, who had been quietly scrolling through an online archive on her laptop, suddenly gasped. Guys, look at this. It's an old town planning document from the early 1960s, before the community center was built. It details the geological survey of the land. She turned the laptop screen toward us. The document was technical, filled with geological jargon, but one phrase jumped out at us, highlighted by Jessica's cursor. Anomalous subterranean water table. Unusually deep and extensive, fed by an ancient natural spring system. Caution advised during excavation due to potential structural instability and unknown depths. Unknown depths, David whispered, his voice hoarse. It echoed the very name of our nightmare. They built the pool right on top of it, Emily realized, her eyes wide with dawning horror. They knew there was something unusual, something deep, something ancient, and they built a giant concrete basin over it. And what if Ronald Miller, I suggested, my voice barely audible, found something during that deep excavation project? Something connected to that ancient spring system? Something that wasn't supposed to be found. The disappearances, the construction worker, the anomalous subterranean water table. It all began to weave a chilling tapestry. The pool wasn't just a pool. It was a lid, a cap on something far older, far deeper than any of us had imagined. And we, in our foolish curiosity, had somehow cracked that lid. As we packed up our things, the library, once a haven of quiet knowledge, felt suddenly oppressive, filled with unseen eyes and whispers from the past. The locket in Jessica's bag felt heavier, colder, a direct link to the secrets we were unearthing. We had opened a door, not with a key, but with a horrifying discovery, and now the entities that had been dormant beneath the community pool for decades, perhaps centuries, were stirring. They were making their presence known, not just in our dreams, but in the fabric of our waking lives. The pool, we now understood, wasn't just deeper metaphorically. It was a nexus, a portal to something truly ancient and malevolent, and we had just scratched the surface of its terrifying truth. The real horror, we knew, was still waiting for us, lurking in the depths of that forbidden water. The realization hung in the air, thick and suffocating, more potent than the dust motes dancing in the dim light of the old records office. We stared at the scattered documents, at the crude drawings, at the historical accounts of disappearances, and then at each other, our faces etched with a dawning horror. It wasn't just a pool. It was a hungry maw, a tear in the fabric of reality, and we had just peered into its gaping abyss. A nexus, Michael breathed, his voice barely a whisper, his eyes wide with a fear I hadn't seen in him before. A portal. That's what the symbols mean. That's what the old stories were trying to tell us. Jessica, usually so composed, ran a shaky hand through her hair. The deep well wasn't just a physical well, was it? It was a place, a concept, where the veil is thin, where things cross over. Her gaze fell upon a faded newspaper clipping detailing the disappearance of a family in the 1920s, their last known location near the old mill, which was, of course, where the pool now stood. All those disappearances, not just accidents, not just runaways, they were taken. David, ever the pragmatist, tried to find a scientific explanation, but his usual confidence was gone. He picked up a page covered in the strange, flowing script, his brow furrowed. But how? How could water be a portal? What kind of energy? What kind of physics is at play here? He looked at us, his eyes pleading for an answer we didn't have. It defies everything we know. Because it's not physics, David, Emily said, her voice trembling. She pointed to a drawing of a swirling vortex, identical to the one she'd sketched from the pool's depths. It's older. Something ancient. Something that doesn't operate by our rules. Her artistic eye, which had seen patterns where we saw only chaos, now saw a terrifying truth. The symbols, they're not just warnings. They're invocations. Or perhaps containment spells. Containment. The word sent a chill down my spine. If this thing, whatever it was, had been contained, what had happened to release it? Or, more terrifyingly, what was happening now that it was awakening? We spent what felt like an eternity, but was probably only an hour, sifting through every last scrap of paper, every map, every coded message. The more we learned, the more the pieces clicked into place, forming a picture of an encroaching terror. The pool wasn't just deep. It was infinitely deep, connected to a dimension beyond human comprehension. And it wasn't dormant. It was active. It was hungry. We found references to a local cult, long disbanded, that had once revered the deep well, offering sacrifices to it, believing it held the key to ultimate knowledge or power. They spoke of the sleeper, an entity that resided within the water, capable of granting wishes to those who offered enough, or devouring those who dared to disturb its slumber. The sacrifices had stopped, the cult had faded into obscurity, but the well, the pool, had remained. And now it seemed the sleeper was stirring. The recent disappearances, Michael said, his voice grim. Ben, Sarah, Mr. Henderson, they weren't random. They're part of a pattern. Feeding. Or maybe a preparation. Preparation for what? Jessica whispered, her eyes wide with dread. Emily pointed to a faded, brittle page, distinct from the others. It was a diary entry written in a shaky, almost desperate hand, dated from the early 1900s. The author was a woman named Eleanor Vance, a local recluse known for her eccentric beliefs. Listen to this, Emily read, her voice hushed. The whispers grow louder. The water darkens. The sleeper stirs from its long slumber. It demands more, not just flesh but will. It seeks a gateway, a permanent opening to truly manifest. The old ways, the bindings, they weaken with each passing year, each forgotten memory. We must not let it succeed. The ritual must be performed. The key is in the heart of the town, where the earth remembers its ancient pact. The key, David repeated, his voice laced with confusion. What key? An ancient pact? She's talking about a ritual of containment, Jessica clarified, her historian's mind working overtime. Something the cult or the town elders did to keep it sealed. But it's failing. The pool is trying to break free. She traced a finger over Eleanor's frantic handwriting. The heart of the town. That's not just a poetic phrase. It has to be a specific location. Michael's eyes scanned the room, landing on an old, forgotten map tacked to a dusty corkboard. It was a cadastral map of the original settlement of Havenwood, far older than any of the modern town plans. Look at this, he said, pulling it down, carefully unfolding its brittle edges. It was hand-drawn with intricate details of long-vanished buildings and pathways. In the center, marked with a faded X and a tiny, almost imperceptible symbol that matched one of the containment symbols we'd found, was a spot labeled the Old Town Square, Founders Memorial. The Founders Memorial, Emily murmured. It's still there. It's just a small stone monument now, almost swallowed by the overgrown park near the library. Eleanor's diary mentioned the earth remembers its ancient pact, Jessica said, her voice gaining a new urgency. Maybe the memorial isn't just a monument. Maybe it marks the site of the original binding ritual. The key might be something buried there. Or the site itself holds some power. The implications were chilling. If the pool was awakening, if it was actively seeking to break free and manifest, then going back to the source of its containment, to the memorial, was our only path forward. It was a desperate gamble, but what choice did we have? The thought of alerting the authorities was quickly dismissed. Who would believe us? A sentient pool, an ancient entity, a portal to another dimension? We'd be laughed out of town or worse, committed. We have to go there, Michael stated, his voice firm, resolute. To the Founders Memorial. We have to find out what Eleanor meant by the key and the ancient pact. If there's a way to stop this, to reseal it, it has to be there. A wave of dread washed over me, but it was accompanied by a strange sense of purpose. We were no longer just observers, we were participants. The fate of Havenwood, perhaps even more, rested on our shoulders. As if on cue, a low guttural rumble echoed from outside the records office, a sound that seemed to vibrate through the very foundations of the building. It wasn't thunder. It was deeper, more resonant, like the earth itself groaning in protest. The single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling flickered violently, casting long dancing shadows that seemed to writhe and stretch like grasping tendrils. Then a whisper, faint at first, then growing louder, seemed to seep in through the cracks in the walls. It was a chorus of voices, distorted and alien, yet undeniably present. It sounded like 1,000 drowning souls, their pleas and their agony intertwining into a symphony of pure terror. It was the pool. It was calling. It was reaching. The air in the room grew heavy, thick with an unseen presence. The temperature plummeted, and I could see my own breath misting in front of me. A faint, cloying scent, like stagnant water and something rotten, permeated the air, making my stomach churn. This wasn't just fear. This was the tangible manifestation of something truly malevolent pressing in on us. "It knows," Emily whispered, her eyes wide with terror, fixed on the ceiling as if the entity itself was hovering above us. "It knows we're here. It knows we're trying to stop it." The whispers intensified, intertwining with the deep rumble, forming a chaotic symphony of dread. It was no longer a distant threat. It was right outside, perhaps even inside the building with us. The flickering bulb finally gave out, plunging us into absolute darkness, save for the faint moonlight filtering through the grimy windows. In the sudden black, the sounds became overwhelming, a chorus of despair and hunger that seemed to claw at the edges of my sanity. The cold deepened, a bone-chilling embrace that promised oblivion. We huddled together, our hearts pounding in unison, each of us acutely aware that we had disturbed something ancient, something that had been waiting patiently for its moment. And that moment was now. The pool wasn't just a portal, it was an intelligence, an entity, and it was no longer content to simply take. It was coming for us. We had opened the door to its secrets, and now it was opening the door to our reality. Our only hope, our only desperate chance, lay in the forgotten history of Havenwood, beneath the unassuming stone of the Founders' Memorial. We had to go back into the dark, into the unknown, to face the awakening horror that lay hidden beneath the placid surface of the community pool. The chill night air bit at us as we moved like shadows through the deserted streets of Havenwood. The town, usually so quiet at this hour, felt utterly desolate, each gust of wind carrying a phantom whisper that made the hairs on our necks stand on end. Our destination loomed ahead, a dark silhouette against the faint glow of distant streetlights. The Founders' Memorial. It stood in the town square, a towering obelisk of gray granite, flanked by smaller plaques commemorating the town's earliest families. We'd passed it countless times, dismissed it as just another piece of local history, a dusty testament to a bygone era. Now it felt like a silent, ominous guardian, holding secrets we were desperate and terrified to uncover. "All right," Michael whispered, his voice tight with tension. "Jessica, you're the history buff. Anything specific about this monument that ever struck you as odd?" Jessica, her eyes scanning the weathered stone, shook her head slowly. "Not overtly. It's standard colonial-era design. But the inscription, it's always been a bit vague. To those who sowed the seeds of prosperity and bound the earth to our will. It sounds more like an incantation than a tribute." We fanned out, our flashlights cutting through the gloom. The beam from David's phone, brighter than our small handhelds, danced over the intricate carvings, the names of the founding families, the Blackwoods, the Ashworths, the Caldwells, the Thorncrofts. All names that had once been prominent in Havenwood, now largely faded into obscurity, save for a few descendants still living in town. Emily shivered, pulling her jacket tighter. "I feel watched. Like something knows we're here, digging where we shouldn't." Michael nodded grimly. "That's probably because something does know. This awakening horror we talked about? I have a feeling it's not too keen on us prying into its past." We meticulously examined every inch of the monument, running our fingers over the cold stone, searching for any anomaly. A loose brick, a faint line that didn't belong, a symbol out of place. Hours crawled by, each minute feeling like an eternity. The initial surge of adrenaline began to wane, replaced by a gnawing frustration. Had we been wrong? Was the memorial just a red herring? Just as despair began to settle in, a low grunt from Jessica broke the silence. "Here. Look." We converged on her, our lights converging on a section of the obelisk's base. It was a peculiar carving, almost imperceptible amidst the natural wear and tear of centuries. A stylized depiction of a pool, but not just any pool. This one had strange angular designs radiating from its center, almost like roots or veins, burrowing deep into the earth. And surrounding it, a circle of shadowy figures, their arms outstretched as if in supplication or offering. "It's almost hidden," Jessica murmured, tracing the lines with a gloved finger. Right beneath the name Thorncroft. Michael knelt, his eyes narrowed. "Thorncroft? That's one of the original families. The ones who owned the land where the pool now stands. This isn't just a carving, is it? It's a key." He pressed against the stone, then tried to twist it, but nothing happened. David, ever practical, pulled out a small multi-tool. "Maybe it's a pressure plate or a lever system, not just a twist." He worked carefully, his fingers exploring the edges of the carved pool. Suddenly, a faint click echoed in the stillness, startling us all. A section of the stone, no bigger than a brick, recessed inward with a soft scrape. Immediately, a narrow, dark opening appeared beneath it, revealing a small, hollow space. Michael reached in, his hand disappearing into the darkness. He pulled out a small, heavy wooden box, bound with rusted iron straps. The wood was dark, ancient, smelling faintly of damp earth and something else. Something metallic and faintly acrid. "Careful," Emily breathed, her voice barely a whisper. "What if it's a trap?" Michael ignored her, his focus entirely on the box. He fumbled with the clasp, which surprisingly wasn't locked. With a creak that sounded deafening in the silence, the lid slowly opened. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was a single leather-bound journal. Its cover was unadorned, save for a single deeply etched symbol, the same angular root-like design we'd seen on the monument's carving, radiating from a central point. Jessica carefully lifted the journal. Its pages were brittle, yellowed with age, filled with elegant, looping script written in faded ink. This is an original Thorncroft journal. It dates back to the very founding of Havenwood." We huddled together, our flashlights illuminating the ancient script. Jessica, with her historian's eye, began to decipher the entry on the first page she opened. "It's from Silas Thorncroft," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "The year is 1783. The land is stubborn. Our crops fail. Our livestock sicken. The winter grows long and our people starve. Despair grips Havenwood. We sought counsel from the elders of the Whispering Pines, those who knew the land before us, and they spoke of a deeper truth, a pact that could be made with the ancient spirit that slumbers beneath this soil." Our blood ran cold. An ancient spirit that slumbers beneath this soil. Jessica turned a page, her fingers delicate. "The elders led us to the sacred spring, a place of immense power, where the earth's heart beats. They showed us the rift, a natural fissure that plunges into the abyss. They warned us of the price, but the desperation in our eyes outweighed their caution. Prosperity they promised, but at a cost. A periodic tithe, a sacrifice to appease the slumbering one, lest it awaken in wrath and reclaim all that we have taken." David let out a low whistle. "A tithe? As in human sacrifice?" Michael's jaw was clenched. "It has to be. The disappearances. It all fits." Jessica continued, her voice growing strained. "We, the founders of Havenwood, Blackwood, Ashworth, Caldwell, and Thorncroft stood before the rift. We offered the first tithe, a young man strong and pure, cast into the chasm. The earth trembled, a deep hum vibrated through us all. And then the land flourished. Our crops grew bountiful, our families thrived, and Havenwood prospered beyond our wildest dreams. The spring, once a wild, natural pool, became our sacred well, the portal through which the tithe was offered, the source of our prosperity." "The sacred spring," Emily whispered, her eyes wide with dawning horror. "The community pool. They built the pool right over it." "Not just over it," Michael corrected, his voice grim. "They engineered it. The unassuming stone, that bound the earth to our will. They built the pool as a permanent, disguised gateway for these sacrifices. A perfectly normal, innocent-looking community feature masking a horrifying, ancient ritual site." Jessica flipped through more pages, her breath catching. The ritual was simple yet profound. Once every generation, when the stars align and the veil between worlds thins, a life must be offered. A life of vibrant energy drawn to the water unsuspecting. The drowning accident was to be the cover, the tragic happenstance that kept the town ignorant, and the spirit appeased. We vowed to keep the secret, passing it down through our bloodlines, ensuring Havenwood's continued prosperity. The journal detailed the first few ties. The names of innocent townsfolk recorded with chilling detachment, disguised as accidental drownings. The dates lined up with periods of unexplained disappearances in Havenwood's early history. The founders weren't just settlers, they were cultists, bound by a horrific pact. But something went wrong, Jessica said, her voice barely audible. This last entry. It's from 1952. The spirit stirs. The last tithe was not enough. It demands more. It grows restless. The pool's depths feel colder, darker. We fear our pact is weakening. The Thorncroft family, as guardians of the truth, must find a way to appease it, or Havenwood will pay the ultimate price. We stared at the journal, then at each other, the full weight of the revelation crashing down on us. The community pool wasn't just a place where accidents happened. It was a hungry maw, an ancient sacrifice chamber, and the entity it fed was now awakening. The recent draining and refilling, the renovations designed to make it deeper, must have disturbed it, perhaps even angered it. It had been dormant, a sleeping giant, but now it was stirring, demanding its overdue tribute. The disappearances of Sarah, Mark, and then the others. They weren't random. They weren't accidents. They were the entity's desperate attempts to sate its hunger, its ancient claim on Havenwood. And the people trying to expose the truth, like Mr. Henderson or anyone who got too close, they were simply collateral damage, removed to protect the horrifying secret. "This is insane," David finally whispered, his voice hoarse. "This town, it's built on a lie, on blood." "More than a lie," Michael corrected, his eyes hard. "It's built on a living, breathing horror. And it's not just awake. It's starving." A sudden sharp crack echoed from the base of the monument, making us jump. The air around us grew heavy, thick with a palpable sense of dread. The faint hum we'd felt earlier intensified, vibrating through the ground, a low guttural growl that seemed to emanate from beneath the earth itself. The shadows around us seemed to deepen, to writhe. We weren't just reading about a forgotten horror, we had just announced our presence to it. By uncovering its past, we had stepped directly into its present. We had disturbed its slumber, and it was not pleased. The Founders' Memorial, once a symbol of Havenwood's pride, now felt like a tombstone, marking the grave of countless innocents, and potentially our own. The placid surface of the community pool was indeed deeper than it looked, a gaping maw to an ancient, malevolent power, and we had just kicked the door open. The clatter of the falling stone echoed horribly in the cavern. A low guttural hum vibrated through the very bedrock beneath our feet, a sound that wasn't just heard, but felt deep in our bones. Above us, the water in the pool, visible through the ceiling grate, began to churn. Not a gentle ripple, but a violent, unnatural maelstrom, spiraling inwards as if a colossal drain had just been opened beneath its placid surface. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of ozone and something else. Something ancient and metallic, like old blood and cold copper. A chilling pressure descended, pressing in on our chests, making it hard to breathe. Michael grabbed Jessica, pulling her back from the edge of the newly revealed chasm. David stumbled, his eyes wide with a horrifying mix of terror and a macabre sense of vindication. Emily let out a small, choked cry. From the swirling depths of the pool above, a sickly, incandescent light began to emanate, casting grotesque shadows that danced wildly across the chamber walls. The light pulsed, synced with the rhythmic hum that now throbbed relentlessly, assaulting our senses. Then a voice, or rather a chorus of voices, whispered in our minds. It wasn't in any language we knew, but the meaning was clear. Asterisk awakened. Consumed. Joined. Asterisk. The whispers intensified, fragments of thoughts and memories, none our own, flashing through our minds like chaotic lightning. Images of fear, of despair, of quiet surrender. We saw faces, fleeting and indistinct, but undeniably human, their eyes wide with the very terror we now felt. These were the memories of the vanished, the consumed. The entity wasn't just a monster. It was a collector, a devourer of consciousness, absorbing the essence of its victims into its own unholy being. It had been slumbering, feeding on the residual energy of the land, but now, with its chamber breached, it was fully roused, and it was hungry. It's pulling us in," Jessica gasped, clutching at Michael's arm. The unseen force was growing stronger, a magnetic current trying to drag us towards the gaping hole in the floor. The stones beneath our feet began to vibrate violently, tiny pebbles skittering towards the abyss. "We have to get out," Michael yelled, his voice strained against the oppressive hum. He tried to pull Jessica away, but the force was like an invisible hand, pushing and pulling at us. Emily had sunk to her knees, hands pressed against her ears, whimpering as the psychic assault intensified. David, however, was staring at the swirling pool above, his face a mask of horrified fascination. "It's like a vast consciousness," David murmured almost to himself, oblivious to the immediate danger. "It doesn't just kill, it integrates. Every person who vanished here. Their minds, their experiences are now part of it." The realization seemed to hit him with the force of a physical blow. It's been growing for centuries, feeding on this community, on the energy of life itself. Suddenly, tendrils of water, impossibly dark and viscous, began to seep through the grates in the ceiling, snaking downwards like living ropes. They writhed and stretched, reaching for us, glistening with that eerie internal light. "Look out!" Michael shouted, shoving Emily aside as one of the water tendrils lashed out, narrowly missing her face. The tendril struck the rock wall, leaving a smoking, corroded mark. This wasn't just water. It was something else, something corrosive and alive. The ground continued to shake, and a fresh crack spiderwebbed across the ceiling, releasing a shower of dust and small stones. The chamber, our supposed sanctuary, was becoming a death trap. The only way out was the narrow passage we had come through, but even that felt miles away, obscured by the swirling, oppressive mist that was now condensing in the chamber. "We need a plan," Jessica cried, her voice echoing the rising panic in her eyes. "David, anything? Any legends, any symbols that could repel it?" David tore his gaze from the monstrous pool. "Repel it? I don't know. The legends spoke of offerings of appeasement, but never of fighting it directly. It was always considered an immutable force, something to be avoided or honored." He paused, his eyes darting around the ancient chamber. "But the carvings, the symbols on the walls, they depict a struggle, a people trying to resist." We looked around. The intricate carvings, which we had initially dismissed as mere decoration, now seemed to pulse with a faint, almost imperceptible energy under the entity's influence. They told a story not of worship but of defiance. One particular symbol, a stylized depiction of an inverted triangle with a jagged line striking through it, appeared repeatedly. "That symbol," Jessica pointed. "It looks almost like a ward. See how it's always placed at natural points of energy, or where the water would have flowed." As she spoke, the entity seemed to react. The whispers in our minds coalesced into a deafening roar, a cacophony of agony and rage. The water tendrils from the ceiling multiplied, descending faster, thicker, coiling and striking at the ground around us. The air grew impossibly cold, then searing hot, flickering between extremes as if the entity itself was struggling to contain its immense, chaotic power. One tendril snaked towards David, wrapping around his leg before he could react. He yelled, struggling against its grip, the corrosive liquid burning through his jeans. "David!" Michael lunged, grabbing David's arm, trying to pull him free, but the tendril was impossibly strong, tightening its hold. Jessica frantically scanned the walls. "The symbol! The inverted triangle!" she yelled, pointing to a large, unblemished carving directly behind the spot where David was being pulled. "It's radiating something. It feels different." Michael, with a desperate surge of strength, managed to wrench David's leg free, but the tendril whipped around, striking his arm. A searing pain shot through him as the corrosive liquid made contact, blistering his skin instantly. He gritted his teeth, refusing to let go of David. "Emily, the flashlight. Shine it on that symbol," Jessica commanded, her voice surprisingly steady despite the chaos. Emily, still trembling, fumbled with her flashlight, directing the beam onto the ancient carving. As the light hit the symbol, it didn't just illuminate it. The symbol seemed to absorb the light, glowing faintly with an internal luminescence that pushed back against the oppressive darkness of the chamber. And for a split second, the humming faltered. The psychic whispers lessened, reduced to a faint, distant echo. The water tendrils paused, recoiling slightly, as if struck by an unseen force. "It's working!" David shouted, his leg throbbing but his mind racing. "The symbols aren't decorative. They're a containment system. An ancient people tried to seal it away, or at least dampen its power. But why did they fail?" Michael coughed, his arm burning. The respite was fleeting. The entity, as if enraged by this defiance, roared again, a sound that vibrated through the very air, rattling our teeth. The glowing symbol flickered, struggling to maintain its light against the overwhelming onslaught. The water tendrils surged forward with renewed ferocity, targeting the flashlight beam. It wants to destroy the symbol, Jessica realized. It's a weak point. Then we have to protect it, Michael declared, stepping in front of Emily, shielding her and the flashlight with his body. The tendrils lashed out, striking the wall near them, sending chunks of rock flying. The chamber was collapsing around us. There must be more than one, David yelled, pointing to other symbols on the far side of the chamber, barely visible through the swirling mist. If we can activate them all, maybe we can push it back. Activate them how? Jessica asked, dodging a tendril that grazed her shoulder. The light. The energy, David shouted, gesturing wildly. The legend spoke of kindling the spirit of defiance. It must mean channeling something into these wards. But what kind of energy? We had only our flashlights, and they were barely enough to make one symbol glow. The entity was growing stronger, its presence suffocating. The air was thick with the scent of decay and overwhelming power. The pool above was a churning vortex of dark energy, and the chamber floor was still trying to drag us into the abyss. Michael, his arm now visibly burned and bleeding, looked at the glowing symbol, then at the other inert carvings. He knew what David was suggesting, but it felt impossible. We were four individuals, armed with nothing but a few flashlights, against an ancient, hungry entity that had devoured countless lives. We need to get closer to the other symbols, he said, his voice grim but resolute. We need to spread out the light, but it's too dangerous. We can't all go. Jessica's eyes met his. She understood. One of us would have to be the bait, the distraction, while the others tried to activate the remaining wards. I'll go, she said without hesitation. I know the layout of the carvings better. I can identify them faster. No, Jessica, it's too risky, Michael began, but she cut him off. We don't have time, Michael. We're already losing ground. She pointed to the ceiling. The crack was widening, and the dark water was beginning to drip through, not just through the grates, but through the very stone. The chamber was not just a trap. It was a sarcophagus, already sealing us in. Emily, stay with Michael and keep that symbol lit, Jessica instructed, her voice firm. David, you know the history. Guide me. Tell me which symbols to look for, where they're typically placed. David nodded, his earlier terror replaced by a focused, desperate determination. They're usually at the corners, or at points where the ley lines converge. They always have that inverted triangle, sometimes with additional glyphs around it. With a final desperate glance at Michael, Jessica grabbed a spare flashlight from her pack. Keep it busy, she yelled, before darting away from the relative safety of the lit symbol, plunging into the swirling darkness and chaos of the chamber. The entity immediately shifted its attention, its whispers growing louder, its tendrils lashing out, chasing her as she moved like a phantom between falling rocks and striking water. Michael stood his ground, shield-like, protecting Emily and the struggling light beam. His heart hammered in his chest, a frantic drum against the impending doom. He watched Jessica disappear into the gloom, a tiny beacon of courage against an unimaginable horror. The fate of everything, of everyone, now rested on her impossible gamble. The placid surface of the community pool was indeed deeper than it looked, a gaping maw to an ancient, malevolent power, and we had just kicked the door open. The moment the last syllable left her lips, a seismic tremor ripped through the ground, not a natural quake, but something far more sinister, originating from beneath the very concrete of the pool deck. The placid water, reflecting the sickly yellow glow of the emergency lights, began to churn, not just ripple, but boil with an unnatural vigor. It wasn't just the water moving. It was as if something immense, something truly ancient, was stirring from a deep, unfathomable slumber. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of ozone and something else, something metallic and acrid, like old blood and forgotten rust. A low guttural hum vibrated through Sarah's bones, a sound that bypassed her ears and resonated directly in her skull, threatening to shatter her teeth. The light itself seemed to dim, swallowed by an encroaching shadow that had no discernible source, but simply was. This was it. Her gamble. Her impossible, desperate attempt to use the very conduits Dr. Thorne had feared, to reverse the flow, to seal what had been inadvertently opened. She had seen it in the translated texts, a forgotten counter-ritual, a desperate last resort carved into the final crumbling pages. It wasn't about prevention anymore, it was about containment. From the roiling depths, not a creature of flesh and bone emerged, but a distortion. The water didn't just boil. It fractured the light, creating impossible angles, bending the very air into shimmering obsidian tendrils. These tendrils, like grasping fingers of pure shadow, began to rise slowly at first, then with an accelerating hunger, reaching for the edges of the pool, for the concrete, for them. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed at her throat. She could feel the entity's presence, not as a physical being, but as a vast, consuming emptiness, a void that sought to assimilate, to erase. It was pure malevolence, ancient and utterly alien. It wanted Oakhaven. It wanted everything. "It's not a creature." A voice, weak but urgent, rasped beside her. Dr. Thorne slumped against the railing, his face ashen, his eyes wide with a terror that mirrored her own. "It's a principle. An anti-existence. It consumes the very idea of being." Sarah didn't look at him. Her gaze was fixed on the rising darkness, on the way it began to warp the concrete, turning solid matter into a shifting liquid nightmare. The symbols she had etched, the ones she had invoked, were glowing faintly beneath the water, fighting against the encroaching shadow. They were her only hope. She had to complete the final sequence, the heart of the counter-ritual. It meant physical contact, a direct interface with the gateway. It meant diving into the very maw of the entity. "Stay back," she yelled, her voice barely a whisper against the rising hum. "Don't move, don't interfere." Taking a ragged breath, she launched herself forward, not into the deepest end, but into the swirling symbolic heart of the pool, where the glowing glyphs pulsed with a desperate energy. The water, when she hit it, was no longer water. It was a freezing, viscous medium that resisted her, tried to pull her down, not with buoyancy, but with a crushing, infinite weight. The moment she was submerged, the world outside became a blur of distorted light and shadow. The sound intensified, a cacophony of unheard screams and the grinding of cosmic gears. The entity was inside her now, brushing against her mind, probing, attempting to unravel her very consciousness, to find an entry point, a weakness. It showed her visions. Oakhaven crumbling into dust, its inhabitants screaming silently as they dissolved into nothingness, the sun itself winking out, consumed by an endless night. It was a future it promised, a future it was. But Sarah pushed back. She focused on the symbols, on the intricate patterns she had memorized, the forgotten language of containment. She had to feel them, to imbue them with her will, to force the gate shut. Her lungs burned, her muscles screamed, but she ignored it all. This wasn't about survival anymore, it was about defiance. She reached out, her fingers trembling, tracing the glowing lines of the central symbol, the one that represented the binding. As her skin made contact, a searing pain shot through her arm, as if she had plunged it into molten lead. But it wasn't heat. It was pure, concentrated cold, a cold that threatened to freeze her blood in her veins. The entity shrieked, a soundless scream that vibrated through the water, through the concrete, through the very fabric of reality. It was a sound of pure rage, of ancient power thwarted. The tendrils of shadow outside the pool recoiled, thrashing violently, tearing chunks from the pool deck, splintering the concrete. "Sarah!" Dr. Thorne's voice, distant and muffled, reached her. He was trying to help, but he couldn't. This was her fight. She felt the entity's full force now, a tidal wave of psychic pressure, trying to crack her mind, to break her will. It showed her her deepest fears. Loneliness, failure, the crushing weight of responsibility. It amplified them, twisted them, made them real. She saw her parents, their faces distorted in accusation, blaming her for everything. She saw the empty house, the forgotten memories. But then, a flicker of something else. Not fear, but resolve. She remembered the warmth of Mrs. Henderson's smile, the camaraderie of her fellow lifeguards, the quiet determination in Emily's eyes. She remembered the simple, beautiful normalcy of Oakhaven, the reason she was fighting. It wasn't just for herself, but for everything that made life worth living. With a primal scream that was swallowed by the water, she pushed back, pouring every ounce of her will, every fiber of her being into the symbols. The pain intensified, becoming unbearable, but she welcomed it. It was proof she was still here, still fighting. The glowing glyphs pulsed brighter, a brilliant blue-white light that began to push back against the encroaching shadow. The tendrils of darkness, which had been grasping at the pool's edge, began to writhe, to retract, as if burned by an invisible fire. The hum, which had threatened to deafen her, began to waver, to falter. The entity fought back with a ferocity that threatened to tear her soul apart. It was a battle of wills, a clash between the mundane and the cosmic, between life and oblivion. Sarah felt herself weakening, her vision blurring, the cold seeping deeper, threatening to claim her. But then she saw it. A faint glimmer, deep within the pool, beneath the glowing symbols. Another symbol, one that hadn't been visible before, etched onto the very bedrock of the pool's foundation. It was the master seal, the ultimate lock. With a final desperate surge of adrenaline, she pushed herself deeper, her fingers scraping against the rough stone, searching for that final hidden glyph. The entity screamed again, a sound of pure terror this time, as if it knew what she was doing, knew its time was running out. Her fingers found it, a deep groove in the stone, cold and unyielding. With the last vestige of her strength, she pressed down, her entire body trembling, her consciousness fraying at the edges. A blinding flash of light erupted from the pool, so intense it momentarily eclipsed the emergency lamps. The hum ceased abruptly, replaced by a deafening silence. The tendrils of shadow, which had been thrashing wildly, froze, then shattered, dissolving into nothingness like smoke. The water, which had been a churning maelstrom of shadow and light, suddenly became still, perfectly unnaturally still. The blue-white glow of the symbols faded, then winked out entirely. Sarah felt herself being pulled upwards, not by her own strength but by an unseen force. Her head broke the surface, gasping, coughing, her lungs aching, her body shaking uncontrollably. She clung to the edge of the pool, her muscles screaming in protest. Dr. Thorne was there, his face streaked with grime and tears, his hand reaching out, pulling her onto the concrete. He didn't speak, just held her, his grip surprisingly strong. The pool was still. The water was clear. The air was clean, if still tinged with the faint, unsettling scent of ozone. It was over. Or was it? She looked back at the pool, its surface now reflecting the faint, returning light of dawn. It looked like any other community pool. Placid. Inviting. But she knew what lay beneath. Oakhaven had been saved. The entity had been sealed, pushed back into its slumber, its gateway locked. But the cost was etched into her very soul. She would never look at a body of water the same way again. She would never feel truly safe. Dr. Thorne, slowly rising, helped her to her feet. He looked at the pool, then at her, a profound weariness in his eyes. "You did it, Sarah," he whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion. "You closed it. You saved us all." But his gaze lingered on the water, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Was it relief? Or was it fear? The sun began to rise, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, casting long shadows across the pristine pool deck. The sounds of distant sirens grew louder, finally reaching the scene. Emergency lights flashed in the distance. Help was coming. As the first responders arrived, their faces a mixture of confusion and concern, Sarah looked at the pool one last time. It was a perfect rectangle of sparkling blue water, reflecting the morning sky, utterly devoid of any hint of the horrors it had just contained. But she knew, and she would always know. The placid surface of the community pool was indeed deeper than it looked. It was a scar on the earth, a thin veil over an abyss, and its slumber was fragile. The town of Oakhaven would never truly be the same, nor would she. Some doors once glimpsed can never be truly unseen, and some depths once plumbed can never be truly forgotten. The quiet hum of existence, she now understood, was merely a whisper above the roar of the void, and sometimes, if you listened closely enough, you could still hear it, echoing from the deepest, darkest parts of the most innocent places. The pool would always be there, a silent sentinel to a secret that would forever haunt the heart of Oakhaven, a chilling reminder that some things are best left undisturbed, no matter how curious the surface may seem.